Now we turn to the town administrator update.
And now that we're well behind schedule, I'm sure this
10
will,
of 9,
I'm sure this will be a
and we're gonna-
concise update. No pressure.
Gonna make some time up here. All right, let me just do a couple quick updates. Our Gateway Health Group is meeting next week, and we hope to have finalized rates for 2018. I also want to just acknowledge George Callahan out in the audience. Members of the Finance Committee weren't able to come tonight, and they apologize for that, but they will be reviewing the budgets, and I'll be meeting with them next Wednesday. But George is a trooper, and he showed up to listen to the
Thank you,
budget
George.
presentation, so he's going to have to help me with the update to the Finance Committee.
Nice to see you.
Let's see, I passed out to you also the Carver Elementary School project update. This is our monthly reports that come out. These will be posted online, they're in color, and you can follow these in great detail. But this is what our project manager puts together for everyone. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to let me know. Let's see. Let's go from here. Our audit, you all have copies of the audit. Those have been emailed to everybody to take a look at that in the management letter. Because Dave was not going to be here, we did reschedule that to the 21st. So Dick Sullivan will be here to present the audit to us at that particular evening. As it relates to budget scheduling, we're looking at the 21st to have a bulk of the other departments come in. And in working with Scott Neef at our meeting in March 7th, he'll have the approved school budget to come and meet with us on March 7th for the school committee to present their budget. So that will take place then. I want to update on the middle high school project, and then you also have an item here for some proprietary items that were in your packet. First, let me talk about the school. I had previously updated the board and the capital outlay committee that we were in the process of building into the bid specs to buy new compressors for the rooftop units, because MSBA was going to pay to disassemble them, take them down, and then to reinstall them. And we felt it was more appropriate to put up new units from a maintenance standpoint. The gas that's used for those compressors is R22 gas. That gas has, in essence, is not allowed to be produced anymore by EPA. There is recycled R22 gas. A bottle that used to cost $50 now costs $800 because they're recycling the material. We had, when we started looking into this, we were looking at purchasing units that companies had stopped making, but we initially were told that there were many units on the market. We've since found out that there are not any units on the market. First we were told there were not many, and then we found out that after Dave did some additional research, all of the available units that were manufactured have been purchased. And the manufacturers are no longer making those older units. As a result of that, we are not going to be putting that into the bid specs because the cost of replacing those units with the additional downstream piping and connections would go from $100,000 to probably something like $2.5 million. Now, not all the units need to be replaced. We were doing it from a maintenance standpoint, so as we go forward, we will build this into our capital budget to potentially replace one or two a year as they fail. And there may be other options at that time that may be more cost advantageous for us. But that is a change compared to what we had before. Also tied into the budget update is Scott Neef and I have presented a grant, and we're in the process of soon to be presenting our second grant to the state on the Community Compact. If you may recall, back in November of last year, both when we had a joint meeting with the school committee, both the school committee and the Board of Selectmen authorized the superintendent and I to submit grant applications as part of this Community Compact. With that, there are two components to the grant that we have submitted. One is to create a townwide IT department that would be responsible for the entire network of town and all of the individual computers in everyone's office and in the school. And we're going to be presenting at your next joint meeting in March a proposed memorandum of agreement between the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to allow the superintendent and I to go forward and implement that. We've asked for grant money to assist us with some of the transition cost for that, and also for some of the funding that's necessary to help us fund the position that's going to be needed for this, which we believe currently we have a bulk of that money available, but we're trying to get some state money to help us through this transition, and then in 2019, we build the entire cost into the budget. With the school coming online and hoping to add another Chromebooks to 3 more grades, their IT usage go up, and then ours as a town continue to go up with the building of the new fire station and its interconnectivity to the rest of the town, plus with the new school coming on town. So we are a little deficient in IT full-time support, and that's how we're looking to address this. So it would be, in essence, a mini regionalization between the school and the town to create this centralized IT department. In addition to that, we're also going to be coming back to the two boards, and this will be right after town meeting, which will be part of this grant, and a second grant is to move forward with creating a centralized facilities maintenance department townwide. We anticipate that this is probably going to take from 18 months for it to be fully implemented, but we anticipate on talking to the two boards in right after town meeting to begin moving forward in that direction for a July 1st start with the board's approvals. I want to emphasize this has nothing to do with the cafeteria workers at the school. They're not part of this. This has nothing to do with bus drivers. They're not part of this. This has nothing to do with the janitorial staff at the two schools. Those men and women serve as part of the public safety component of the schools, and that's not part of it. So a lot of progress has been made by Scott and I and the consultant, and we've incorporated our Dave Sigentoff into here and John Woods as well. So I just want to give you an update that is moving forward, and we think we have a solution that works with all parties.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Yes, the town administrator went rifling through that in such a good expedited form, but I want to go back to the proprietary items for the Carver Middle High School accelerated.
Yes.
Don't we, because I'm looking at our package here and it says request for approval, so don't you need us to make an approval for that?
Yes, we need you to approve that memo that's there. Yes.
So that would require a vote.
That does require a vote.
So I guess I'll make a motion that we approve the proprietary items for the Carver Middle High School Accelerated Repair Project.
And
Second.
those were the if you want to just read the
Yeah,
titles
just
off.
tell us what they were briefly.
High efficiency commercial boilers, mortise lock sets, small format interchangeable core cylinders, exit devices, door closers, and that's it.
Was there a second? Further discussion? Being none, those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay. And moving right along, what I wanted to here is pass out a very preliminary draft warrant. It has a big draft on the front of it. Greg Corbo wanted me to make sure that everyone understands its draft. it's a draft.
Hey, is this a draft?
Yep, there
So
are.
this is the final copy?
There are some figures in here that need to be addressed, and there's also some reformatting that has to happen in here. Some of these articles will be combined as we go through here real quick. Some will not. What I'd like to do with the board is to kind of just skim over some articles that we should discuss at another meeting. But some of these articles here, I need to get the board's approval in order to move forward so that they can be advertised appropriately with the planning board's approval. In other words, some of these are zoning related, and as a result of that, if these are initiated by the Board of Selectmen, there needs to be a public hearing that the planning board does, and then they have to issue an opinion to the selectmen prior to town meeting. And again, I'll address those as we go forward. So just real quickly, Article 1 is the annual reports. Nothing unusual about that. Article 2 is going to be a report from the Fire Station Building Committee. With this, we're going to transfer the premium funds that resulted from the bond for the fire station and the fire engines to the capital and debt stabilization fund. We're going to rescind the rest of the debt authorization that town meeting had approved. In essence, we're going to eliminate the credit on our credit cards. And then we're going to use some of that debt and stabilization fund to pay cash versus borrowing the next piece. In other words, when I went out to bid the bond for this, we put $20 million of the $30 million into the elementary school, and we put $10 million into the school. Into the fire station and into the engines. The total amount authorized for the fire engines and the fire station was about $10.55 million. I borrowed 10. That's what we borrowed. So 5.5 had authorization to borrow. We didn't. I want to use the bond premiums to pay for that in cash. There's no need to borrow it. That's in essence what it is. In addition, the project is under budget, and they are going to be asking town meeting to vote to return and rescind $200,000 that was previously approved for the project. And by the way, keep in mind that the typical change orders on a project, on a new construction project, are between 3.5% to 4.5% for design errors or unforeseen conditions or what's called code issues. I'm going to let them update you on what that number is, but it's slightly more than 1%. So big kudos to them for industry standards and beating that. So that's the Article 2. Article 3 is unpaid bills, total about $3,000. Article 4, there's going to be a supplemental appropriations. When you voted the Cranberry Village 1 year, one-time rate reduction, so they could go back and improve their water line.
Yep.
That was done after town meeting, so we have to actually take some money out of retained earnings in order to balance that budget because the revenue didn't come in this year as anticipated because we lowered the rates. And so the good news from them is that it looks like their water usage is down, so they may have fixed a bunch of leaks. That's also added into less revenue coming in. So that's why we did it for 1 year, and it makes a whole lot of sense. The allocation of funds from free cash, Article 5. We've talked about a lot of these. Just real briefly, we've got the School Special Education Reserve, Unemployment Healthcare Utilities Reserve, OPEB Trust Fund, the Compensated Absentee Funds per the auditor. We are proposing a one-time
Bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
COLA increase. This is for FY17, the year that's ending. We did that for FY16. This would also be for FY17. This does not apply to the base of the non-union employees. Some funding going into our capital outlay reserve, some FEMA and MEMA funding to take the money we receive from them and put that into a fund that we can draw from so we don't have this 2 or 3 year delay. We also have, and I just want to address these two things real quickly, is the BTG receivable deficit. This and the next item are more than a decade old. These go back prior to when John Adams was here. The company that was delivering material to the landfill went bankrupt. And what the town did at that time, the town booked those funds as a receivable, as income, and they spent the money before they had it. Well, again,
Oops.
the money never came, the company went bankrupt, the lawyers looked at this for a long time, and this is on our books that continues year over year, and in order to get it off, we have to use free cash to basically say, okay, we're using that money to pay for the receivable that never came in.
And this will be the end of it?
This will be the end of
Oh,
it.
thank God.
And then there's also this unknown miscellaneous receivables that are also more than a decade old. Those are only $4,300, and this will take that off the books as well. And then we have our typical North Carver Water District Enterprise Fund so that we can help pay for their capital and debt structure. On that, just like Gesundheit, just like John Woods has done with the DPW budget with the Lane's help, the planning department is also looking at redoing the North Carver Water budget so we can have some better accountability of that going forward. So that's our free cash articles. Article 6 is our general operating budget, no changes there, just with updated numbers. Article 7 is the capital improvements plan. I think we've gone over that before, that's what's built into that. Article 8 is CPC committee. I want to bring your attention to one item, and that's if you look at the bottom of the page, the first full paragraph from the bottom. And this is to transfer the sum of $283,499 appropriated under Article 9, 2015 town meeting for the Forest Street Recreation Project field project to the middle high school track and football field reconstruction project for development of plans, specs, and project management. So in essence, what we're doing is we're taking old money that was done for a project that we've abandoned, and we say, you know what? We're just going to give town meeting's authorization to expand the scope and allow us to transfer that money to this project, and that'll allow us to go through this design effort and determine what's the best way to develop this. That's it for there. Article 9, under the municipal relief bill, there's a new way of doing revolving funds. We'll be putting those in there. And we're also able to do the solar net metering credits that we weren't able to do in the past. At future town meetings, we'll just have to approve Part B if Part B changes. But Part A will be into the bylaws. Article 10, this is the adoption and prohibition of use of land for non-medical marijuana. This is, now, normally, under state law, any use has to be allowed in a town. And I think, many years ago, there was, the town approved an area in town for an entertainment club, I believe it was. Because you weren't able to prohibit that. When the petition ballot went forward for marijuana, it actually has in there, and it's not well written, but it allowed for towns to prohibit the establishment of some of these facilities for non-medical recreation marijuana in a town. So the petitioned article actually, because that was approved as a law now, allows for the towns to prohibit that. So this is what is proposed here for Article 10. The case law, there is no case law on this is new. But, our attorneys feel that we have a solid chance, not an absolute chance, that this will be able to go forward, and some other towns are looking in this as well. Article 11 is a moratorium on establishing these as well. So it's almost a dual-prong attack as to how to go forward and attack this.
That's a temporary one, though.
As a temporary, yes. So, that is what is proposed. And this one, and both of these actually would need to be submitted to the zoning bylaws to go through that zoning process. So these are
To the
10 and 11 that I would need approval from tonight, subject to council's revisions, but to go forward and do the advertisement to start the process, because these have to deal with zoning.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Article 12, I want to come back to. Article 13, as we've talked about, we've having difficulty getting members to some of our boards and committees. Currently, when the town adopted establishing a conservation commission, you're allowed to have between 3 and 5 members.
Yep.
The town, when it approved it, stated that it shall be 7 members in Carver. And there have been quorum issues that have been happening, and meetings that have to be rescheduled because someone missed a meeting and couldn't continue the hearing. So at the request of the Conservation Commission, they want to move that down from 7 to 5 members. Article 14 is, we are currently having, we have 3 members on our Board of Health. Unfortunately, there have been some significant health issues that have been involved. And what this article does is proposes to make the Board of Health appointed. This still needs some further discussion, but it's something that we need to look at how to do it, because there hasn't been able to be a Board of Health meeting. I forget exactly, but it was sometime this summer.
But you're not looking for us to get into discussion of that right now?
Not tonight, no.
Okay.
But if I remember correctly, this was part of the governance committee recommendations back a year or two ago.
That's correct. 2
That's
years
when
ago.
we went to the appointed treasurer, I think, on that evening, and for whatever reason, this particular suggestion, I think everything else passed except for this, so
That's correct.
this isn't new.
That's correct. Article 15, these are some reforms that are happening with the municipal relief bill that we need to adopt, and that's really 15. 16 is abatement of low-value tax parcels. 17 is unpaid taxes not in excess of $100. So that's what those 3 are, and we'll get you more information on those. But keep in mind, every time we go out to try to, with the tax bills of under $100, it's a cost to send out quarterly bills. So if we can send those out once a year for small denominations, it saves the town a lot of processing money, that our processing time sometimes will exceed what the actual tax bill is. And that's just not good management.
Yeah.
If we can avoid it. But we needed the state law in order to do that. Article 18 is the adoption of stretch code. You've heard that tonight.
Why is that on here already, though, is my question.
What's that?
Well, it was on the first time we went through it, too.
What do you mean the first time?
Well,
No, I understand it was on the first time, but I thought we were gonna get more information and everything, and then,
So you're not voting all of these tonight? This is just what's proposed? We're gonna have
Okay.
that meeting that we talked about.
oh,
and then you
okay,
can
I
vote for this, right.
apologize, okay,
So
got
the
it.
only ones that I'm asking you to vote for tonight are the zoning-related items.
Okay.
And not in final form to approve them, but to approve them being on the warrant.
So this
So-
is
so-
not one of them,
That's not one of them.
good, okay,
So that's a stretch code.
thank you.
Senior tax relief for, which is a home rule petition, that's probably another
Oh.
lengthy discussion that we can do another night unless Ron wants to talk about that tonight.
No. Please.
which one?
The one that
19,
you're not
Yeah,
gonna talk
the
about.
one we're not gonna do right now.
Oh, okay, yes, because we're still waiting for town council to fill in some blanks on that.
Oh,
Thank goodness.
thank you.
Article 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, these are all zoning articles, proposed
need
by
these.
the planning board, that they've submitted. Article, and that's 25
We don't need to do
too.
anything with those tonight?
No, because those are already, they're already moving them forward in advertising because they've submitted it.
Okay.
They just need our approval of the ones that are non-planning board initiated. Article 26 is the Carver Master Plan approval. This is something that they wanted to bring and actually have town meeting approve the master plan. It's not required, but it makes a lot of sense to actually have the legislative body approve this as well. And we will set up some time when they can come before you and also present the plan to the Board of Selectmen.
Michael, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to anyway. So is the master, because I know it was voted on, has it been posted on the website? I just haven't looked for it yet, just curious.
I assume it has been, I just haven't checked. And if it hasn't, it's just waiting for some minor tweaks.
Okay,
But I don't know the exact answer to your question.
okay, that's all right.
Article 27 is the money petition articles.
Weren't we gonna have these organizations come in to chat?
My thought with this is that I'd like us to focus on getting the articles done, getting the budgets done, getting all of those things done, and getting the warrant printed, because you have to print this for these. And then in March is have those folks come in before town meeting and make a presentation to the board, and then you can determine whether you want to support it or not support it. So the idea of time for that would be sometime in March.
Oh, and on Article 24, if the next time we put it out, could you please have a space between free and standing?
Yes.
Because it was like, what is that? Thank you. I figured.
Again, this is, as town council said, this is a draft. We'll pick those up. There is one more article that they are working on, to try to
Who's
fix.
they?
That is town council.
Okay.
And it's to fix an issue we have with the earth removal committee. And that is, the earth removal committee has been around for a long time and does a lot of good work in town and has worked out a lot of agreements with the bog owners and those that are mining sand and rocks and so forth in the town, and it significantly helps John Woods and cover a lot of road repairs that need to be done. That being said, there's an inconsistency within the zoning bylaws, that the zoning bylaws to some extent exempt earth removal activity if there's a new subdivision being done or a new approved building. So when you had the gas station being built down in North Carver, there was a significant amount of material that was mined and sold out of town that technically was not something that the Earth Committee could do because the zoning kind of prohibited it. So there's a conflict in our own regulations, and they're working on preparing some language to correct that conflict. That will require a zoning notification, so I am going to ask you to just approve that going forward so we can get the advertisement out. And they'll get the wording finalized this week so that can be done. But again, it's to correct the conflict and allow the earth removal committee to always be involved in anything over a certain volume that it goes to them as well.
You looking for a vote tonight?
So for that one, because it'll be zoning related, I would.
How do you want us to word that for something that's not here?
To authorize town meeting to authorize town council to submit the zoning change and other amendments that are necessary to fix the inconsistency in the bylaws and zoning for earth removal.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. And were there other articles that you had wanted us to, did that encompass all the zoning articles that you wanted us to approve
That
tonight?
accompanied all the zoning articles. I want to just pass out this and then also go back to one article.
The nuisance law?
Well, this is this is just a COLA update that I'm passing out. That just like you to have for your own information. This shows where the town is for what it's offered since over the last 13 years for 2007 through 2019 for COLAs. And it also explains the steps between each grade for the different bargaining units. And that's the box on the left. Currently right now we have the clerical, DPW, dispatch, police, and non-union employees have all adopted the 50-50 hire for new employees.
Except
And
the school.
that is correct, and I believe that that's something that hopefully will be addressed at their next contract negotiation. What you also see here is all of the steps are 2% between clerical, DPW, dispatch, and non-union. The only difference with that is the police, but the police have a lot less steps, and when you average this out, they receive a step on average every 3.75 years. The point being is that they're in line with the rest of the departments. Obviously, the schools with their 5% steps and 12.5% for stop step is something that's problematic, as that goes into a larger increase every year compared to what the rest of the employees are getting.
So this means the change for top step, for clerical it's 2, DPW 2, dispatch 2, police 1.2, non-union 2, and the school 12.5.
That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct.
Is that all school unions, or is that just the?
That's just the teachers.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
just the
'Cause I was
teachers.
gonna say, I thought the custodial contract and the other contract they had were not as high as that.
Yeah, we're just focusing on that school one for
Okay,
right now.
thank you.
What you see here, though, is, and I'm bringing this forward, is the non-union, over the same time frame as the other unions on the COLAs, received a 0.5% increase over these, over 12 years. Where all the other unions, clerical, DPW, dispatch, was all 1.2, 1.3, and obviously the school was 1.8%. So there is some, it's not fair, compensation, if you will, for the non-union employees. And that's why in the budget that I put forward is that we're proposing for 2018 a 2% COLA for non-union employees. And that'll be the first COLA they've received in 9 years as part of this proposal. As you know, in previous years, I didn't feel we could afford to do that. This year, I do believe that we can build that into the budget. But this is kind of the background for that to give some context as to why I believe that that's necessary to move forward.
And also, I think it's fair to point out where you have at the top of both charts, 50/50 for new hires healthcare, that is on the municipal side only at this point.
That is correct.
Right.
So that's kind of my update and bring everybody up to speed on that. I'd like to go back to Article 12.
Nuisance.
Article 12 is meant to, currently right now under our town regulations, we really don't have any ability unless we go to court either through the Board of Health or potentially through the Selectmen to the courts to have a site cleaned up. And what I mean by that, if someone had 3 couches on their front yard and their interior couches, upholstered furniture, technically they can do that. And there's no restriction in the town to try to prohibit that from happening. What this article does is tries to address that particular issue, that from a public view, trying to determine what is considered a public nuisance. How much stuff can people have in their front yard? And clearly, we're in a farming community, so I think, to some extent, people accept a certain amount. But where do you cross that threshold? So there's really 2 things that are in here, and again, I really want you to read this and think about it. The first is that if you have upholstered furniture that was designated for interior use, obviously we're trying to avoid varmints and that type of a health issue, that we want to be able to have that removed. The second is, it's somewhat subjective as to what somebody thinks is art and what somebody thinks is a public nuisance. So one way around that is just to put in a quantity amount. And that's what's kind of proposed here, is that if you have a substantial amount of over 280 cubic feet, which is the equivalent of a 10-yard dumpster, which is not the long dumpster, the short ones that are 3.5 feet tall, that would in essence be that quantity component that's there. So you have two components. You have upholstered furniture, which, you know, clearly after it rains and heats up and rains and everything, you're gonna have all types of rodents in there. And then you also have a large quantity component. Now, the question is how do you want to define this and what is acceptable and what's not? And it's really a policy question to figure out what is going to work in Carver. Clearly, I think if we asked everybody in Carver, do you think it's appropriate to have 3 couches on your front lawn that are all frayed and have rodents crawling in and out of them? I think everybody would say no. Okay, so that's pretty clear. But from there, where do you go? And how far do you go? And what is acceptable versus not acceptable in Carver? And that's really what needs to be further defined in here in an additional discussion. So I'm kind of framing the issue for you to begin to think about that. Again, how it's proposed here, it's a substantial amount over 10-yard dumpster, or it's unupholstered furniture. Now, with that, there's a certain time frame for people to clean it up. If they don't clean it up, then they can get fined. If they don't get fined, then we can take them to court and so forth. So we're trying to be reasonable, but we're also trying to protect all of the abutting neighbors and the community. You've had, over the last year, you know, a couple properties where there's been some complaints about equipment and, not really equipment, but just so-called junk and abandoned cars on property.
I was just gonna ask you, do
We-
abandoned cars,
So abandoned cars, anyone in town is allowed to have one unregistered vehicle. They could have a tree growing through it. It's
Yep.
one unregistered vehicle. Now, if it's a bus, a yellow school bus with a tree growing through it, well, then that may trigger the 10 cubic yard dumpster, because you couldn't fit that into a 10 cubic yard dumpster. So the bus, you might be able to move out of there. But if it's an unregistered, you know, Taurus, Ford Taurus, hypothetically sitting on somebody's property, and they only have one, there's not much you can do about that. However, the building inspector recently had one property that had about 5 or 6 unregistered vehicles, and I think they removed all but one of them. And that was after several attempts by the building inspector, so we try to work with the people. And eventually, they were told it was going to be removed, and it still wasn't removed, so we issued a ticket that if it's not removed in 7 days, you're going to be fined, I think it was $300 per vehicle per day. And all of a sudden, they were moved.
And how did you come up with that number and that?
It's a standard state fine.
Right.
Okay, so that, I just want to make sure we just didn't make it up out of.
No, standard.
So, you know, that had some success. So anyway, again, this is going to require you guys as kind of the policymakers to really frame what and define what you determine to be a public nuisance. And again, we're talking about junk. We're talking about upholstered furnitures. We're talking about piles of debris. This isn't addressing buildings yet. So that's part of the discussion. The second thing that I just want to bring to your attention, and it was presented at our last meeting by Mr. Gray, who unfortunately I wasn't aware he was going to present this, and you know, there was some information that was not accurate in that discussion. But what I want to do is talk about the building that he was speaking to up on Route 58, where the dog stand is. And this is a property that our building commissioner has been working with the owner, Mr. Gillis, for some period of time. And I think what's important to keep in mind is we as a town don't have the right to go on somebody's property. I mean, the police do if they're in the hot pursuit of something, but we don't have the right to do that. We can look at property from the public way and determine if there's issues with it. And if we start to go down the road of getting a court order to, which is one mechanism to go to have some property cleaned up, then we potentially could own the liability for that from an environmental cleanup standpoint, from a loss of value if it's a grandfathered use or a grandfathered structure, that could come back to the town from a financial standpoint. However, that being said, there are things that we can do, and I want to emphasize, Mr. Morgan, our building commissioner, has been working with Mr. Gillis to do this. And we thought we were coming to a conclusion this past fall, when Mr. Gillis actually had a purchase and sale / option agreement to sell his property to an end user. Unfortunately, that deal recently fell through. And Mr. Morgan has been in touch with Mr. Gillis, the owner, and they're meeting on March 14th when Mr. Gillis gets back into Massachusetts. But at the same time, after talking with counsel, because there is the possibility on a private piece of property for someone to go into that building that could get harmed, even though that's no responsibility of the town. It is our responsibility to go to the owner and say that we believe that that property should be fenced. And that is a regulation tied up in Mass General Laws 143, Section 6, that allows the local and building inspector that upon a report or upon his review determines that it's dangerous, that this uninhibited and abandoned property and open to the weather is dangerous, that he can then require that the landowner secure the property so that it's by fencing the building in. So he can order a fence be done, and he's gone through and actually made that and has given them 45 days to go through and put a fence around the property. We are told that Mr. Gillis is still trying to actively sell the property. However, one of the things that he's concerned about is the building footprint that it's on is a non-conformance building structure. So if he went into zoning to build a brand-new building on the lot in that spot, he would not be able to do that because of the setback requirements that are tied into the property. So by tearing down the building without immediately building a new building, he would lose his development rights to the property. So, he's a little, he's gone forward and, as we know, painted the building with the red a few years ago and did board up the front. And now we're going to be requiring him to go forward and put the fence around that building. Now, having said all that, if we find out that that doesn't happen, the selectmen can go to the courts and ask them to order additional work be done on the property to replace the nuisance. I think, again, beware that if we go down that road, there may be some liability that comes back to the town for any diminution of value and or environmental cleanup, that have we, in essence, done a reverse taking by eliminating his ability to develop the property. By no means am I saying that I condone or the building commissioner condones how the building looks right now, because it doesn't look good. But it's trying to balance what's within our regulations and what we can do without significantly impacting the town from a liability standpoint.
Did we talk to Copeland and Page about this?
Yes, Copeland and Page's direct advice is, obviously there's an issue and you need to address the issue. Their advice to any and all towns, because of future liability with getting involved in private property, is do the absolute minimum that you're required to do. And they believe, since the building is open, that under the statute for requiring the owner to make the building secure is within our jurisdiction, and that would not create a liability for the town.
Putting the fence.
As a matter of fact, it's actually benefit for the town for taking that proactive stance.
Yeah, I mean, just, this came up because it's an eyesore. And, Carver is becoming, with Edaville and Thomas Land and King Richard's Fair, people travel here. And having like an eyesore like that just stand out like that is obviously something we'd like to avoid. Mm-hmm. Putting a fence up around it, I don't think is going to enhance, it is only going to make the problem worse. Then you're going to have an eyesore surrounded by a fence, because I assume it's not going to be a 20-foot high fence. It's going to be, it's just locked in. I'd like to see some, I mean, I understand what Copeland and Page is saying. I've had some conversations on this issue, and we know that soil there needs to be remediated, because it's the former site of a gas station. And we don't want the town to have to pick up that burden. At the same time, though, I would think that we could work out something with the building owner that, if he's concerned that if he knocks it down, that we are then gonna hold his feet to the fire about putting a new building up there. I would think we could have some negotiations on that topic in which the planning board or zoning or whoever it would be agrees in advance that if he takes it down, we are recognizing that, and you will not be held to, but we might, work something out with him ahead of time. Get the thing knocked down, make it safe. If you've seen some images of what's out behind there, it's a minefield. And there's and a little kid could get access inside that building. So that I would like to see us work with the landowner. And to be honest, I think he'd have a better time selling the property if that monstrosity wasn't sitting on top of it.
Let me check with council to see if we can legally provide, extend his grandfathered rights. And
That's
if
what I was just gonna say,
permissible.
isn't that lot grandfathered itself,
Well,
plus the use?
I don't know the answer to the question, whether or not we can do that or not, but we need to ask. But that's what it would be, is grandfathering the rights for the building, but as you know, with the non-conforming use, once you've taken down that structure, you've lost your non-conforming use rights. But we'll ask the question and find a way to see if that can be done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why the planning board couldn't,
I don't know if they have that power,
Yeah,
but we're
that's
gonna,
the problem. They
Yeah.
may not be able to.
and it quite possibly, it could come back to the ZBA, maybe they have the authority to do that, but we'll ask that question. And around the back of the building, I mean, I think that some of that stuff around the back of the building could fall under this nuisance bylaw that may exceed 10 cubic feet.
except doesn't the
Yeah, but
nuisance
how do
bylaw
you-
only deal with the front of the building, doesn't deal with the back of the
It's
building?
within public view.
Yeah, but what,
When you keep driving, you can still see it.
but the enforcement is only, what, $25?
Per day, and then the second.
Oh,
one
that's a
goes to
per day?
50, and then 100, and then 300, and then.
Oh, I didn't,
Up to $300 a day.
okay, I didn't see that, I thought it was just
Yeah,
$25.
number 3, each day or portion thereof
Okay,
constitutes
gotcha.
a separate offense.
I guess my thinking is, again, not going back to the hearing we just had, but in telling someone what to do with their property, but it sounds as if Mr. Gillis is reasonable and would be willing to work with us.
Right.
And if we can get him reasonable assurances that if he gets rid of the structure and cleans out all the barrels that are hanging around out back, and Lord knows what else is hanging out back there, that we in turn can provide him some guarantees.
Let's check with. town
Well, I'm saying if we can do that.
Yeah.
But I
I
think
think
that
that'll
would be, because I mean, that property's been there like that for how long?
Oh, my goodness.
Just an abandoned piece of property for an awful
Very
long time,
time.
so. All right, can we get an update on that at our next meeting, please?
Any overall questions with the warrant?
Can we take this home, even though it's a draft? and
Yes.
Look at it?
This is a draft. You can
Thank
take
you.
it home. Please do.
So the final version won't be much different from this, then? I'm
Content-
joking.
We don't have time for jokes now.
I'm
We're
sorry.
running along.
No,
And besides, Tom left.
Any other updates from the town administrator at this point?
I don't
He's
think
done.
so.
He's done? All right, Helen says you're done.
well, he paused long enough, so I knew that, because usually he jumps.
Board of
right in.
Selectmen update, Ms. Maroney.
I don't have a thing tonight, thank you, it's 9:45.
Ms. Hewens?
Well, I'm going to make it quick and just do the quick streetlight thing, because that's,
Well, that's actually a separate
that's all
item.
separate.
That's
I
not
know,
a
but I'm going to
selectmen
make
update.
that my selectman
guess you
comment.
have that
so
option.
Two birds, okay.
Yes.
Good job.
So the police chief, the fire chief, the EMS chief, the DPW superintendent, and Dave Robertson and myself met on January 26th. It was a good meeting. the DPW superintendent started off by saying that he personally had been blinded by these are the streetlights in the center of town, on at least one occasion, but on the plus side, he said when it snows, his crew is able to see a little better with them. But they're very dangerous when it rains, because it makes things very hard to see. The fire chief pointed out that in his opinion, they're really much too bright for the character of the town, and the essential problem is that they're too close together, which we probably won't be able to do anything about. Having said that, he had done a lot of homework on the wattage of the bulbs, and suggested that they're actually, we think they're 90 watts. He's suggesting that we might want to go down to 75 watts, which I believe is what the new fire station has. It doesn't change the color of the bulb, so you don't get the yellow light, but it is dimmer, so you're not, you don't feel
Couldn't
like
you get the other type of bulb,
you're not on Broadway,
like the ones out front of the town hall?
We don't know. Let me just do this real
Okay.
quick, and then, so, the police chief suggested that we go to Mass Highway first and see whether there was some way we could get a change order. I mean, make it real simple. And the EMS chief said that one or two of his EMTs and paramedics had also said it was too bright. So, John Woods, our DPW superintendent, did go see Mass DOT. Actually, the very next day, they weren't in. But as of today, they actually got back in touch with him, and they haven't made any promises. He explained to them that all the safety departments felt the same way, and that we wanted to know what something that Mass DOT could do right now. This guy at Mass DOT gave John contact information up at Mass DOT to talk to, because I guess he has to go higher than the people here in Carver, at the office here in Carver. So, but the gentleman at Mass DOT apparently wasn't real optimistic that they could do this change order. So what had really been discussed at the very end of our public safety department head meetings was that we can start there, ask them. If they can't do that, then we can once the streetlights, these particular ones, belong to us when the project is finished. The fire chief said we might just want to change out the bulbs, try ones that are dimmer, see what we liked. And so at worst case scenario, we'd have to do it ourselves. There aren't that many of them. And, hey, if we become a green community, we can get a grant for it.
Get a grant for it.
There you go.
All right, so essentially, we're trying to get DOT to do the change order and pay, and have them pay for it.
Correct.
If that fails, we wait until the project's done, we own the lights.
Sometime in the spring.
And then examine options at
Yep,
that point.
just so
Okay.
people out there know.
Yeah, the DOT cost for that was $24,000 to replace the lights.
$24,000.
That's what their cost
much-
was to
But
do
that's
it.
not what it was estimated on that
It's
sheet
like
you
$1,000
sent
a
us.
bulb.
What it turned out to be.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper if we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, from us, it's,
Yeah.
I think, and John's gonna double check on the bulbs, but we had an initial quote that we think we could do it for about $3,000.
That's what I was gonna say.
But again, we're just going back, and now we have the detailed specs, we're gonna confirm that those are the right bulbs. But as Sarah said, it's unlikely that Mass Highway is going to spend $24,000 for our lights, but we're gonna try.
Why does it cost them so much more than it would cost us?
Um,
I know, silly
Don't
question.
go there.
All right, thank you, Sarah, for doing that work. All right, and Mr. Dunham?
In the interest of time, because we're really running late and it's costing somebody some coffee, nothing to add.
I'll just add very quickly, Shane gives thanks. If you have time, you can donate. They are looking to stay open more, so just get hold of Kristen McColgan, who runs Shane Gives Thanks, or is on the board of Shane Gives Thanks. Maybe stop into the store. You can leave your name there, right over here opposite the church in Carver Square, and let them know you're interested in volunteering some time, and that'll allow them to stay open a little more. And then just budget timing in terms of, our hope was to have everything done a month ahead of town meeting, printed up, ready to go. How's that looking?
With the school committee coming on the 7th, I mean, we've already got the number in the budget, so I think we're pretty good. Right now, we're scheduled for the 21st for our next meeting. I think at that point, we'll assess whether or not we need a meeting on the 28th. But between the 21st and the 7th, we'll have everything done. The 7th should be the final date to vote everything.
Okay.
FYI, I will not be here on the 7th or May 2nd, because I will be out of state at conferences.
On March 7th and
Yeah.
May
2nd.
2nd. And actually, just for the record, I'll be out of town on March 7th as well.
We're not going together. Just saying.
Not touching that.
You need humor when it's 10 o'clock at night.
Are both of you out for the whole week or just that night?
I get back on the 8th.
Okay.
I'm leaving the 4th and coming back the 8th. That's
But
why,
we trust the rest of the board to vote appropriately.
All right, we'll figure that out. Let me, okay, all right.
Or if we
just
have to have a
wanted to
meeting,
let-
we could even have a meeting on the
Yeah, see, we'll
the
figure-
14th
I
if
just
we
wanted
had
you
to.
to know in advance, because
Well,
the
has to
budgets
be
are
before the
important.
10th. 10th is
Okay.
the latest,
All right,
to meet the deadline.
okay, I understand. But I leave March 1st, so.
Moving on.
Moving on, yes. Appoint Richard Ward to the Earth Removal Committee as a Selectman's representative. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we appoint Richard Ward to the Earth Removal Committee
Second.
as, yeah.
There was a second for discussion. Those in
Yes.
favor say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, the ayes have it.
Just to be clear, we mean our Dick Ward, former selectman.
Yes.
Is there another Richard Wood?
Is there an-
There might be other Richard Wards in town, one
So,
never knows.
so we're
That would-
talking Richard
That would
F.
be the
Ward.
former Selectman, Richard Ward.
Correct.
The town administrator, you all got an email that we are now in the performance review time for the town administrator. We have this month
How'd that
to
come fast?
complete the evaluation and turn it in to Elaine so that she can begin the tally. She will then distribute a copy to the town administrator. We then, at the end of February, from March 1st to the 20th, it's the responsibility of each member of the board to set up a time to sit down with the town administrator, review their personal evaluation with the town administrator, and discuss the evaluations and goals and objectives. March 21st, well, actually, hopefully, you've already turned them in. I suppose, actually, you may want to wait till after the meeting with the town administrator before you,
That'd be
you turn
correct.
them in. Yeah, I mean, just in case in the
Do we
course of the
have the
conversation.
evaluation worksheets yet?
Yes, they've been emailed out to everyone.
Email.
No, they're emailed out. Well, if you want a hard copy, then I'm sure that the selectman staff could make that happen for you.
You make that too? I love hard copy.
April 4th,
Hard to print those.
April 4th, we'll have an executive session that'll be just the Board of Selectmen to review the evaluation results and, oh no, I guess we do have the town administrator there as well.
Yep, it says, and solicit
Yep.
town administrator feedback.
And then on the 13th, we have a public discussion of the town administrator evaluation, and reveal the results of that, what the five-person board came up with, and then set goals and objectives for fiscal year 18. So that's what we have to do. So essentially, start looking, you can go through, take a pass on the evaluation during the month of February, meet with the town administrator, make any adjustments to your worksheet after meeting with the town administrator, turn that in to Elaine for tallying, and then we'll get the results of that from Elaine before we go into our meeting on April 4th. And then on the 13th, we'll have public disclosure of the results of the evaluation. Okay. Approval of Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission Annual Resident Population.
What is that?
That's how many people live in our town.
It's 11, what does it say?
thought it was 11.
500?
Some towns have seasonal increases, so they just want to know if you.
And do we need a vote to approve this?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Is there a second? Further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Those
Aye.
opposed, the ayes have it. Appointment of Kevin Tracy as an alternate to the Historical District Commission.
I'll make the motion to approve Kevin Tracy.
Second.
The
Further
only-
dis-
I think there's only one in town.
This would be the Kevin Tracy,
TJ.
that's on the North Water,
North Carver Water District.
Water District, okay.
Yes.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Minutes of January 5th, what's the pleasure of the board?
I have a couple of corrections.
Okay,
Bear with me for a minute.
Let me do them now.
yes,
Okay, real quick, on page 2,
this is for the January 5th, correct?
right, this is the urban renewal plan hearing meeting
One I
minutes
missed.
of January 5th. On page 2, in the middle of the page where it says Hewens, bottom of that paragraph, it says Hewens would like to see language of the 43B in the plan be adopted. I just need that to be reworded to read the following, Elaine. Hewens would like to have the urban renewal plan reflect the fact that the town has already adopted Mass General Law, Chapter 43B.
And emailing that to me.
Absolutely, no problem. The second time it says Hewens, it's not really what I said about solar arrays, but that's okay. It says, discuss the concern of roof solar/mounted arrays to support environmental responsibility and green design. I actually asked why the urban renewal plan specifically prohibited ground-mounted solar arrays, particularly since we included that, that's like our zone for ground-mounted solar arrays. I don't know that I got an answer, but at least it's out there. And then the third time it says Hewens, it says that Hewens suggested the plan de-emphasize or remove discussion of principles 6, 7, and 8, expanding housing opportunities, 6 and 7. 6 was housing and 7 was transportation. But it should point out that the reason I suggested that is because the plan actually doesn't discuss those provisions at all. So it was, I think it weakened the plan to sort of pretend that it did. That's it.
Any other additions or corrections?
This was the night that we voted on the plan?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
8 minutes?
I'm just,
Yes.
Is there a second?
didn't I vote against?
Yep.
I voted against this, why, I should have said,
You did. It's at
I
the,
just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right thing, because it says voted 5-0.
no, these are, on
Am I-
these minutes, it's on the last page of the minutes, it says,
Oh, last page,
Maroney,
but-
no.
so I must,
5-0 was the amendment that Alan put forward.
that's what I was confused about, thank you, okay, now I'm clarified.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Minutes of January 17th.
see.
It's the pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Request for parking at Sampson's Pond on September 16th, 2017, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the South Coast Bass Anglers.
Move to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Request of use for Shirtliff Park for the 2017 Carver Farmers Market Sundays, June 18th to October 29th, noon to 4 o'clock.
I'll make the motion to
Second.
approve.
There a second?
second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Our next meeting will be February 21st, and then anticipated meetings on March 7th, March 21st, April 4th, April 11th, which would be town meeting, and then May 2nd, June 6th, August 1st, I guess we're taking July off, September 5th, October 3rd. They say we do our best work when we don't meet. So with that, is there a need for an executive session this evening?
There is, briefly.
You always say that.
For dispatch and DPW labor negotiations.
Can we just go with that?
Yes. Well, you gotta read the whole.
Well, that's what I'm asking. All right, so there's a motion to move to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective
Night.
bargaining negotiations with unions.
Night, George.
Which unions was it?
Dispatch and DPW.
Dispatch and DPW, with strategy, and strategy for litigation for purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate that may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town if held in open session, and to reconvene in open session for purpose of adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Sarah Hewens says,
Sarah Hewen says aye.
Ron Clark says aye.
Helen Maroney says aye.
Alan Dunham says aye.
That's it. We are now in executive session. Thank you for joining us. We will be back here on February 21st. Thank you very much. And I hope everyone enjoyed the game Sunday night because they saw history in the making.
And it was
Thank you.
cold.